Hello and welcome to PowerCultureCoco, home of the Coco. I have ideas, and most of those ideas are about dismantling patriarchal myths to heal our wounds of dehumanization and obedience to irrational authority. Today, let's talk about the dehumanization of patriarchal masculinity, specifically why many men don't know anything about their own friends. It feels like every other week a new article is dropping about the male loneliness crisis, or why women feel drained from being the sole source of emotional labor and support for the men in their lives without receiving the same care and effort in return. This New York Times article is just one example of the genre. Why women are wary of the emotional labor of man-keeping. That's a good term. As male social circles shrink, female partners say they have to meet more social and emotional needs. Yeah. And listen, I can relate. So much of how we live is absolutely unconducive to forming strong social bonds. I mean, just making ends meet these days is so overwhelming that finding the time and energy to invest in building friendships can be really challenging. I moved across the country this summer to a city where I don't know anyone, and I am still working on building those social foundations, so I get it. But patriarchal masculinity creates a lot of unique barriers to men forging strong bonds with each other. And it's such an odd phenomena to witness as a woman or femme, right? Because we see men chronically centering men and other men's approval at all costs. And yet somehow they're also not actually forging strong bonds and connections with each other. And it's like, what's up with that? Take a look at this clip that recently went viral on TikTok.
You know how people say men don't know anything about their friends? I made a game to put it to the test.
I went through a breakup this year. It was really bad.
Don't ask her name.
I had to move out of my apartment. I left New York. Broke my heart. What was her name?
Ah!
I didn't really know why you moved or anything. I didn't know you had a girlfriend. I had no idea. I'm really sorry about that.
I actually thought about it more before I asked you, and you have met her.
I also don't know this.
What's this game show? Fuck Dan. Sounds Gen Z, female.
I'm thinking
Hey, he's on to something. Let him cook.
Let him go.
I'm feeling the letter M. It's either Madison or Mackenzie.
Is there an M in the room?
I'm gonna say Mackenzie.
Yeah, is that your final guess?
That's my final guess.
It's absolutely not Mackenzie at all.
Oof, that video broke my heart a little bit. I know he posted it somewhat humorously, but it must have really hurt to realize that his friends were so disinterested and disconnected that they couldn't even name his live-in girlfriend or why he moved out of the state. Ouch. But this is a fairly normal dynamic amongst boys and men, right? To ask zero follow-up questions and display no curiosity about each other's lives. And yet, while knowing absolutely nothing of substance about each other, many men will go to bat to defend their friends when accused of bad behavior or even crimes against women and children. And we all know the pattern, right? A woman calls out a man for bad behavior or criminal behavior, whether that's assault or being a deadbeat dad who's withholding child support to punish her for leaving. But whatever the case may be, a woman speaks out about her experience with a man, and suddenly, every man who's ever known him comes out of the woodwork and is, no, not my guy. No, he's a good guy. He would never do that. He's a really good guy. And that's a wild dynamic, right? To know so little about each other and yet be so confident, not my guy. And we saw this in action a few months ago with that Man of the Year trend, where women posted heinous things that men were saying and doing, and so many men online were flabbergasted. Where are you ladies finding these men? I don't know anyone like this. It could never be my friends. But they were, right? And it's not that all men do evil things to women and children, but every man absolutely knows a guy who does. But they're not aware, and they don't care to be aware. But when their boy is in hot water, they come to bat to his defense. 10 toes down. Couldn't be him. I don't know anything about him, but couldn't be him. And a part of this is that we are all socially conditioned to provide men with benefit of the doubt while wielding an attitude of incrimination against women. So we often reflexively accept and prioritize a man's word over a woman's without any critical thought. I previously did a deep dive on this pattern. If you're interested, I linked it in the description. But the real question is, why don't men know anything about their own friends? Well, the pattern goes back to their initiation from boyhood into patriarchal masculinity that we've been talking about in our previous videos on the sadism of men who want to repeal women's rights. Before men learn to dehumanize women, they first must annihilate their own humanity and sense of individuality. Boys are socialized into patriarchal masculinity by being forced to emotionally cripple themselves. So they detach from an individual feeling sense of self to instead perform and identify as their gender. Patriarchal man! In The Will to Change, Bell Hooks writes, quote, "The first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem." So boys who are sensitive, creative, or display the sin of actually caring about the well-being of others become targets for patriarchal aggression until such humanity and individuality is beat out of them. And that's what hazing rituals are about, right? You'll have coaches, some grown-ass men, encouraging boys in middle school and high school to roughen up and target the least aggressive boys on the team under the guise of toughening them up. Or in fraternities, who will bond by attacking and humiliating the weakest members for sport, right? And we often see that the fraternities that engage in that kind of intra-hazing are the same fraternities who assault girls ritualistically as a tool of their bonding. And let's be clear, patriarchal women participate and promote this socialization too. So my brother was a lacrosse player, and I remember being at one of his games when he was in middle school, like 12 years old or so, right? And I was shocked by the savagery of the boy moms on the sidelines. These were 7th graders. So some boys were pubescent and growing tall and broad, and some boys were still waiting for their voices to drop. They were a little more petite, right? So it's a mixed bag on the field. And I remember very clearly, this one big kid checked a smaller kid like really hard, sent him flying. He's on his back on the field, right? So the game paused so the ref could go and make sure the kid was okay. And I swear to God, multiple moms on those sidelines got up to yell at the refs saying, "No blood, no foul, no blood, no foul." Could you imagine? Could you imagine yelling "no blood, no foul" to an injured child at a recreational sports game? Like it's not the Roman Colosseum. Oof, boy moms are so savage. So it's just a good reminder that patriarchy is the enemy, not humanity. But ultimately, all of this socialization results in men not actually building real emotional bonds together, but just kind of like parallel playing, right? Where they'll sit shoulder to shoulder and engage in activities without much direct interaction. Watching sports, fishing, playing video games, right? And they're not directly interacting because they're bonding by performing and affirming their gender through activities, not relating person to person. And in comparison, women, femmes, and non-males tend to bond eye to eye, right? Sharing direct conversations, responding to each other with curiosity and care. An individual-to-individual connection and care is something that all humans need, right? We all need that to live healthy lives because life is an inherently emotional experience. And when I care about how you feel, I care about your experience as a fellow human. But men are taught that they are entitled to consume such care and consideration as a resource from women and that they do not reciprocate because that's women's duties, not patriarchal man's. And that really is what man-keeping is, right? Women putting in the effort to emotionally and socially nourish men's lives without receiving the same effort and care in return. And that is draining. And a common pattern is for men to expect to receive tender support from women, but when the time comes to reciprocate, they often behave as they would with their boys. Dismissive, mocking, or just disinterested, right? And I recently experienced this. So I stuck my head out into the dating world and went out with a guy a few times over the summer. Long story short, I thought we were connecting, and on our last date, he shared a lot with me about his personal struggles, and I was really happy to be supportive and that he opened up to me. But a few days later, I got a haircut, and it was really bad, okay? I was very upset after it. I said no layers, and she gave me layers, and my curly girls, you understand, okay? It is serious when that happens because curls take a lot longer than straight hair to grow and show length. So he texted me that day to ask if I wanted to meet up for dinner last minute. And I said, no, I'm hiking. I have to clear my head. I'm not feeling great because of this really bad haircut, right? Need a night to process. My confidence was knocked. He responded by mocking me relentlessly, like 5, 7, 9 texts in a row of, oh, you don't like your hair, so you're never going to go out again? Oh, that's so weak and so shallow. Get over yourself. Like, so obviously I decided to end things right then and right there. It was very over the top and just mean-spirited, right? Like mean-spirited. So I sent a quick, yo, I'm glad we met and got to know each other a little bit. I'm not interested in pursuing anything further. That was really mean. Like, especially we've been on like 3 or 4 dates. And listen, he was furious. He demanded an explanation for how I could do this to him after he was so brave and so vulnerable and told me about X, Y, and Z on our last date. And I said, I told you something that I felt insecure and hurt by, and you immediately mocked me. I don't want that energy or dynamic in my life. And he just like could not understand. He was treating me how he would treat one of his guy friends, right? Mockery. But he also expected that I would never treat him like that I would always be careful with his feelings, but that he could mock mine. I felt the emotional double standard so hard in that moment, but he couldn't really receive what I was talking about when I did try to explain, because he was just so fixated, how could you do this to me? And I do think it's genuinely hard for a lot of men to see the problem in that dynamic in real time. Because they're like, no, I live in this cage of patriarchal masculinity. I can't be an individual or emotionally and creatively express myself. That's a freedom that women have, but men don't. And that's a lie, right? They hold the keys to their own cage. It's similar as to when men say, oh, women can wear pants, but men can never wear a skirt. Women have so much more freedom. And like, that's bullshit. Women were arrested for wearing pants and had to publicly protest, risk social status, comfort, life, and limb to break these arbitrary standards for ourselves. It was illegal in most of America for women to wear pants until 1923. It was considered cross-dressing, and women were literally jailed for wearing pants. Even after the Attorney General declared that ladies in pants was no longer a crime, most social institutions like schools, churches, workplaces, restaurants even, they all banned women who wore pants. Generation after generation of women had to keep fighting for our right to wear pants. And it was not an overnight victory, right? In 1900, women are arrested and jailed for wearing pants. In 1960, women are still denied access to institutional and social spaces for wearing pants. Heck, it wasn't until 1993 that women senators were allowed to enter the chambers wearing pants. As in 1990, if a woman senator walked into the chamber to cast her vote and do her job and she was wearing pants, they'd kick her out. They would block her from doing her job if she showed up in pants. And it sounds a little frivolous, but it's absolutely not. We have drowned women in the name of modesty. Throughout the Victorian era, women would wear these wild swimming costumes. It was like a dress and pantaloons and all this stuff. But all of that extra fabric for modesty caused many women to actually drown in open water. Like seriously, women lost their lives to these dress codes. And even in some old movies, like The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, which is one of my favorites, you should watch it. But in some old movies, you'll see when women are on the beach, they're using a rope to walk into the water because that was their solution. We want you to be modest and covered in everything. You can enter the water, but you can't swim because there's a high drowning risk for modesty. So stand in the water and hold this rope, ladies. So all of this to say, Women have not been given more freedoms from patriarchy than men have. Women have fought more and risked more to free our own selves. And men just haven't done the same for themselves en masse, right? Like, how many men today mock men who are wearing skirts and nail polish? That call is coming from inside the house, buddy. So men have the keys to that cage and can let themselves out and be free, emotionally, creatively, sartorially. But they have to step outside of the hive identity of patriarchal masculinity to do so, and that always involves taking heat. Any person who steps outside of patriarchal gender norms gets shit to varying degrees, right? Varying, like a trans person, that is mortal danger. Me, I'm really tall tomboy, and everyone's just like, kind of figured. And it's hard. I think what a lot of men are recognizing is that patriarchal men will attack men and women and others, but they will attack men who step outside of the patriarchal hive mind. Whether that's to wear what they want or to emotionally connect with each other, like when you are not performing the gender, you will get attacked. It's the same reason why men hate on men who simp for women, right? Which is basically just saying men attack men who seek to understand how a woman wants to be loved and then love her that way. Guys will dogpile. Oh, she's not worth all that effort. You're weak. You're gay. You're pandering to women. And all of this is coming from the same impulse, not knowing anything about each other, not wearing what they want, not expressing what they want. It's all coming from this urge to maintain the hive mind, right? We all must perform and defend patriarchal masculinity blindly. And we have to do this to receive the social privileges. So yeah, it costs us our humanity and individuality, but it's worth it to avoid being targeted by other men and to always have more social power and authority than all women, children, and non-conforming identities. That's the bargain. So at best, the patriarchal hive mind looks like our opening video, right? Where that gentleman's friends knew nothing about his life. And then those guys are left relying on women to harvest emotional nourishment from. So if there's no girlfriend or wife, there's no nourishment. And at worst, the hive mind becomes a public threat to all women and non-conforming identities. Like in this video. Warning, it shows a group of men catcalling women, and it's disturbing.
This viral video from an all-male college in Madrid has shocked Spain. The video shows students at Elias Aguja staging a coordinated mass catcalling directed at nearby female students. Universidad Complutense de Madrid says the ringleader of the incident has been expelled and that a full investigation would take place. Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, said the footage was inexplicable, unjustifiable, and disgusting. According to Público, this isn't the first time this exact same thing has happened, with older students reportedly teaching younger students at the all-male college the chant in previous years. Irene Montero, Spain's Equality Minister, said, "It is an obvious sign that sex education is needed and that institutions must stop legitimizing sexist discourse."
It's horrific, right? And I can't imagine how scary that must have been for the young women just walking through campus that night. Dozens or hundreds of men came together to behave like a pack of wild animals, threatening to hunt down all of the women on campus. Like, that is the dark side of the hive mind. That is the violence of this dehumanization. And healing this hive mind starts with men connecting with themselves and each other, emotionally supporting each other, being curious, inviting each other to open up, and learning how to respond with each other from a space of like compassion, right? Not just raw competitive mockery. All right, I'm going to wrap it here. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. We got new videos coming out every week, and drop a line in the comments. Did any of this resonate with your experiences? I would always love to hear. As always, I'm on TikTok, Coco Has Ideas, Instagram, PowerCultureCoco, and I have free writings up at PowerCultureCoco.substack.com. I'll see you in the next one, guys.